You hear it nearly every day. There's an epidemic of divorce in America, with 1 in 2 marriages failing. Now, some sources say that the divorce rate is falling, but it's still happening all around us. I know it's not a happy subject, but we're going to talk about the impact that it has on children this morning with Dr. Stephen Ragusia. Dr. Ragusia is one of the most professionally recognized and experienced psychologists here in the Keys. He has over 30 years of expertise in a wide range of mental health matters. Dr. Stephen, thank you for being back on the show with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, have you ever done child custody evaluations?
Unfortunately, I've done hundreds of child custody evaluations.
Hundreds of them.
Hundreds of them.
Okay, let's talk about the effect then that divorce has on children.
Well, part of what people need to understand is that for most of human history, there was no such thing as divorce. The only time marriages were assumed to end was when death occurred. That changed very substantially during the 1960s. During the first half of the 1900s, people would have to prove there was a reason for divorce. Things would get real ugly in court as people tried to prove various bad things about their spouse. But then in the 1960s, somebody had this idea about what's called no-fault divorce. And the notion was that couples could end divorce in their marriages through divorce amicably and not have to go to the burden of proving that the other person was in some way or another bad. The problem with that is that it opened up divorce to the possibility of it being so easy that people thought it really wasn't a problem to get divorced anymore. And as a result, the divorce rate went from the single digits well up into the double digits. So that for the last 20 years, the divorce rate has been approximately 45% for first marriages, and a little more than that for second, and a little more than that for third, and a little bit more than that for fourth. Every marriage that occurs after the first marriage, the rate goes up. So by the time you get to the 8th marriage, it's virtually certain that it's going to end in divorce. It's the way it works. Divorce is easy for the adults and for the lawyers now, but it's really hard on kids. And that's what parents don't understand. One of the things I do when I do child custody evaluations is I meet with the parents for the first session, and I tell them how much the divorce is likely to hurt their kids. And I try and talk them into finding a way to make the marriage work. And I tell them that the smartest thing they can do is to fire me and fire their lawyers and fire the judge and just get together and work it out between themselves.
I like that. That's what you tell them.
That's really what I tell them, yeah. And I say, you know, you can spend thousands of dollars having me do a child custody evaluation if you want to. I said, but it's not what's in the best interest of your kids. And the reason for that is because what we know is that the children of divorced parents have virtually every ill that affects mankind happen to them more often than the children of intact families.
Really?
There was a woman named Judith Wallerstein. I actually brought her little book with me to show to the folks at home today.
And what's that called? The Unexpected Legacy?
It's called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. That's right, by Judith Wallerstein. Judith Wallerstein was a psychologist who just died a couple of months ago, actually, at the age of 90. Dr. Wallerstein started out, while she was working on her doctoral dissertation, looking at the effects of divorce on children. And this was in the early 1960s. And what she did was she started off with the assumption that when divorce occurred in a family, the children would be hurt for a short time and then they would adjust. And then that probably after a year or so, the kids would return to normal. What she found, much to her surprise, was that was not the case. Was that kids from divorce continued to have problems well past a year. And then she started on what can only be called a marathon of research. And what she did was she followed these kids on an ongoing basis over 25 years.
25 years, okay.
And in the final study, which is articulated in this book, The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce, the 25-year landmark study, what she described in that book is that even after 25 years, those children were experiencing more severe problems of all types than kids from intact families. And part of what she did was she took these kids, it was about 130 kids, and she went back to the neighborhood where they grew up, and she matched these kids with control subjects who essentially went to the same schools, went to the same school plays, played on the same sports teams, had the same boyfriends, girlfriends, all that stuff, except that these kids came from families that weren't divorced, and the original kids came from families that were divorced.
Okay, so she compared the two.
That's right. And what she found was that children from divorced families tended to get arrested more often, be hospitalized more often, and have their marriages end in divorce more often, have more job changes because they couldn't keep a job more often. They tended to have friendships break up more often. It seems as if for children from divorce, when their parents divorce, it's like an earthquake under them, and they wind up not having faith in life and in relationships anymore. And as a result, they live lives of insecurity, not really being able to commit to long-term relationships with anyone or anything. And that's a big negative impact.
It is. Those are big problems right there that you just explained. And this is all covered in her book right here called The Unexpected Legacy of Divorce. But if people want more information on this, Dr. Ragusa, or maybe they're going through a divorce and they need your help, they can come to you, right?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm a board-certified family psychologist, and it's one of the many things I do.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us. I think we're going to have to do a follow-up on this because I know there's just so much information in the impact of divorce on children.
Okay.
We're going to take a quick break right now, but I'll be right back after these messages with Dr. Ross Williams, so please stay with me.